I'd like to welcome all of our panelists, and maybe if you guys can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you did on Dragon Age and what your job was.
I'm Frank Gordon. I was a cinematic designer, so I built conversations and cutscenes and a lot of the ambient moments.
My name's Matt Goldman. I'm the art and animation director for the project, so my job is to establish and uphold the aesthetics of the stuff we make.
My name is Mike Laidlaw. I'm the creative director for the project, which largely puts me in charge of the design group. So gameplay, rules, progressions, systems, conversations, and virtually anything the player touches that isn't aesthetics.
My name is Aidan Scanlan. I'm the director of writing and design at BioWare Edmonton, which puts me in charge of the design teams for both Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and something you will hear about shortly. For Inquisition, came on for the last year and a half or so, helping out Mike with some creative direction on the wilderness and exploration gameplay.
Hi, I'm Karin Weekes, and I lead the editing group. Like Aidan, we work on all of the IPs that we do. So I worked on Origins and DA2, so part of my job is to help keep lore consistency and try to remember the name of that dude in Origins that did that thing, in case we need to go back and spell his name later. My team also works with the writers to help, they say we thrash up their precious word babies. I say we are enhancing their word babies and leading them onto a productive and shiny life. So take that whichever way you will.
So I think one of the big changes we made, really kind of like right near the start of the project, was to go onto Frostbite. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision and how that worked?
So the decision was one that came up as more than anything. It was I guess a crisis opportunity. There were huge upsides visually. There was an opportunity to work with DICE, and of course we are part of EA, so DICE is kind of a sister studio. We tend to establish our own cultures and our own feel, but of course when you're within EA, you can share the technology. And we saw that as a huge plus, because while they are an engine provider, it means we could go deep in the code, we could work directly with their guys, and there was no fear of spoilers or code leaks or any of the stuff you get when it's an external group. That said, so that's the opportunity. The crisis part is that rebuilding an enormous RPG on anything new is going to be a monumental amount of work and require probably a painful year and a half to 2 years where everything is coming online, but it's Matt's described it as building a car while you're already driving down the road. Like let's put brakes on. Let's see what happens. And yeah, it's the Lego movie scene. Exactly, yes. And so thankfully we employ a number of master builders, and that helped do it. It affected, I think, everybody in a unique way.
And what about, tell me a little bit about kind of the style decisions so far as gameplay, because Origins and Dragon Age 2 have a little bit of different approaches to gameplay. So where did you guys come with the decision for Inquisition?
So I'll tackle some of the high-level stuff, and then I think Aidan and Frank can talk a little bit about some of their specific things, and Matt can talk about aesthetics. At a really high level, what I wanted to do was find a middle ground and try and understand the best of both games to make sure that we weren't... I did not want Inquisition, despite moves to like open world and some things like that we knew were potentially radicalizers. They could change the nature of the game. We wanted to try and hold on to what we felt was the fundamental to Dragon Age that frankly other open world games don't deliver in the same way. So party became kind of pillar number one. We wanted the party to be just as reactive as they have been, if not more so. We wanted them to be fully fleshed out characters. We wanted them to work together as a group. We didn't want to move to solo adventuring. And we wanted to make sure that there was still a real emphasis on story. And that decision was really held up. Because when we first announced the game, of course, you tend to talk about what's new and what's going to be different, because it's intriguing. But the big fear was, with us talking about all these open spaces. Oh, geez, they've gone full Skyrim, and we've cut all story. And it's like Skyrim actually has a chunk of story, but there was this fear that we were going to just parrot them and do exactly that, and not have any of the elements that made Dragon Age great, like having the big meaty chunks of story and so on. So we want to make sure we preserve that as well. So party, story as reward, and then finding a middle ground in terms of combat, so that the speed was still the responsiveness of 2, but not quite that floaty weightlessness that 2 had. We wanted to get more oomph in the animations, and that really is where you come in.
Well, so with Frostbite, we tried, obviously we traded in our stone axe for something we could actually accomplish some of our artistic goals with. And Origin, a fine game, lacked a distinct visual signature, so we were trying to build upon some of the things we were trying in DA2, giving the characters unique outfits and styles of their own, and trying to basically build up kind of a aesthetic criteria so that we could be a little bit more consistent across huge games. And we were looking to branch out into comic books and other publications, a movie, and other games like Hoda and other things that we're trying to do. So we had some ideas that we were able to try out on DA2, but the technology really didn't support it. It was pretty limited. So Frostbite really allowed us to really get in there, build really expansive, huge levels, libraries of objects, the streaming technology, very powerful, shaders, lighting, everything, very superlative technology. And then actually bring those together in scenes.
So one of the benefits to moving to Frostbite is we got to rebuild a lot of our tools, and we took the chance to take a look at the way we presented the story to our fans. And one of the things we tried to do was to get away from the very standard kind of BioWare cutscene, and we pushed things more into the world to let the player have more control over what he was doing, and we were able to do a little bit, not as much as we would like, but quite a few new things. So.
A couple of tactical things that are new in Dragon Age that we were, I don't want to say unsure about, but it was certainly putting at risk. Was one was jump. That was a huge thing that we had never done before, and non-regenerative health, which was a huge controversy with the gameplay team, like in the first couple of years. There were reasons behind it, like for instance, non-regenerative health. We wanted to make sure that you could have smaller combats that were meaningful, so that weren't just trivial and. So, like, if they generally are designed to reduce your health by, say, like 3 to 7%, that doesn't really matter, except when you have to do 10 in a row before you're allowed to get back, or you can find a new camp or get back to a camp, or then you're starting to eating into your healing potions. So we did that in order to have more of intense pacing. And then with jump, we had a system in the wilderness spaces that allowed you to mantle or to step up onto things, and it still felt like you were walking through tubes. And one of the goals, obviously, of Dragon Age is to have an expansive world. And so we did a quick, dirty jump prototype. It was probably about a year and a half ago, maybe even less than that. And it just felt so good. And even though the animation was just literally a Mario hop at that time, it just felt moving through the spaces so much better. And it then, of course, unfortunately broke the level design and environment art teams. And yeah, we made them cry.
From a writing standpoint, as Mike mentioned, we were trying to really keep that to being a solid part of the game and emphasize that. The writing teams are some of the first folks out the door, down the chute, whatever, when we start developing. And there was, we did more words than the people who had designed the games on Frostbite before. So we were one of the teams that was sort of building as we went along. And it was cool because we were trying to get back to where we were at least. Yes, could we have a spell checker, please? That would be great. Thank you. And then as we got to learn more of the options that were available to us, which were really wide-ranging, we were able to customize it and add a lot of features that we wanted. So it took a little while. We fear change as a rule, but once we got rolling, it was really neat.
So game design is very collaborative by nature, particularly between the writing and art department when it comes to things like the characters and the environments there. Can you tell me about how that interplay works and how you guys bring someone's scratch description of something to life?
Well, maybe a cutscene actually would be a good place to start, because in order to actually accomplish something like of that magnitude, you actually need to bring 10 or 20 people together, and they need to understand what it is you're trying to do. So usually somebody from Mike's team would come along, and they have something they want to tell the player about a character, how the character is going to develop, or a plot twist, or whatever the case is. Then we'll get together and actually do a storyboard where we try to walk through exactly what's going to happen. And that's really super important, because that's the first time we can all look at that and understand what we're trying to achieve, and objectively kind of try and deconstruct it and figure out what we're going to make. And we'll have, during that whole sequence, which was at least 3 months where we were storyboarding all the story bits, we'd have concept artists who would do the storyboard, a writer, a sound guy, whoever the cinematic person who was going to actually build the scene. I was there as a representative because we have to provide costumes and hairdos and visual effects and the lighting for the scene and the environment that it takes place. And then we'd also have a writing contact just to make sure that we were staying on target. So it was like pretty big team effort. So that's for, Frank, how many scenes did we have?
All of them. I have no idea. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you laid them out end to end, it would be hours worth of content. And then that's not counting the more procedural things that we did with the not so simple conversation, where you can engage people in the world and just walk off.
The design side, we follow. It's interesting when you think about concept art or sketches for a cutscene. We've started to build a methodology that we use when it comes to developing design content, so that we essentially go through a series of phases with kind of an approval gate. And we do this for almost all of our major content, where narratively, you want to be able to just get the beats. Player learns X, player does Y, and it almost reads like a choose your own adventure for the narrative style. And what we often do is build a super rough level, usually made of like big white blocks. That you can walk through and you go, okay, cool, I'm going to have to travel here, and then maybe you hit a little pop-up that says, fight here, tough, fight here, easy, and you kind of cruise through. And the experience is in no way representative of the game. But what it does do is you can sort of say, all right, we've been through this process before, I can extrapolate from this to go, okay, pacing-wise, I think this will work, or this seems a little light on combat, or heavy. And you can also say, okay, story-wise, hold on, wait a minute. Where you're referencing this, because you've written me the Cole's Notes version. Where does that come up? It doesn't come up in any of your previous notes. And sometimes that's just, oh, geez, I forgot to write it down. Well, we can't keep forgetting to write it down, or it will never come up. And sometimes it's just like a, oops, crap, gotcha moment where you do that. But again, we can build that kind of content in a day, right? A writer can take a rough outline, and we can end up saying, cool, let's get that in-game so you're walking through it. And of course you have like the terrible robotic voiceover is like, hello, I have learned about the thing. And you're like, oh, this is so tough.
We had a few of them, though. We had this Queen Elizabeth voice that was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
She was great.
And Iron Bull had sort of a John Wayne Texan accent.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And there was the Stephen Wright voice too.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. And the bad guy was voiced by a bad Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, Red Delirium, yeah. It was just so nuts. And I cannot do a good Christopher Walken. But anyway, you get the vibe. So
That was about what the Christopher Walken was like.
Yeah,
so that was perfect.
He was of my quality. So anyway, we go through that, and then we continue forward, and we basically move to a white box where it's like, okay, cool, the dialogue is here. Someone's actually written the dialogue out, and the combat's maybe a representative where you have like 2 or 3 guys fighting, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm actually having to play this, and of course, the challenge of building the car on the highway is that maybe combat's broken that day, maybe audio completely fails, but you do your best and try to get a review, and you kind of review it at that's higher higher resolution, that's closer to what the game will be like, still nowhere shippable. But okay, based on this, we like it or we don't, or here's notes. Then we go to a kind of what we call an orange box, which is this is actually a process that in part we helped develop from Valve, and they released like Portal and Half-Life 2 episodes in the orange box. That's where this term comes from. Is a almost complete to the point where it's. Our general rule is it's fun enough that you could put it in front of a focus tester, who's forgiving of some of your errors and go, oh, yeah, no, that was fun, except for the part where it crashed every 10 minutes or something like that, right? And then once that is done, then we move to hardening. And so we basically go, okay, cool, let's slam bugs, let's test it over and over, because we've basically got all the content. Our general sense is this reduces the risk, because, of course, everything takes hundreds of months, to take from concept to done. So by kind of checking it at every step of the way, it goes a lot smoother.
Yeah, like it's a lot easier to change dialogue when you're doing a table read than after you've had the actor or actors come in and record it.
Much cheaper.
And now obviously it was a number of years developing this, and a lot kind of happens in that time. Are there moments that stick out from you from over the process of it? Like I know one for me was the first time I heard the theme, and I've actually really loved the theme for this. I've cut videos together with the theme from it, and the one sign that a song is good is if you spend the hours listening to it on loop cutting a thing and you don't go insane. But it was at PAX East, and Mike came in with his phone. And he's like, Mike Kent, he's one of our audio guys.
Yeah.
He's like, he's just sent me over the cut of the theme.
And the orchestral recording, too.
Yeah.
Not the MIDI one.
The one that they'd done over in, I'm losing it, in Nashville, Tennessee.
It was Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah, down in Nashville. And Mike, we had the bass closed at the end of the day, and Mike piped into our sound system, and he sat down, and it was me, him, and one or two other people. And he plays it, and no one says anything, and we're kind of cleaning up. We stop, and we listen to it the whole way through. And then at the end of it, Mike stands up, and he's like, "That's the one."
Yeah, it was that easy. For me, I think the single biggest moment, weirdly not part of development, but was something we had to develop, was we went to PAX Prime. Was it 2 Septembers ago, I guess, where we showed off the game, kind of full gameplay for the first time. And it was a 40-minute demo, which was pretty ballsy and a little staggering. It showed off exploration, it showed off a scenario, we showed off story, characters, we introduced people. And that demo took a colossal amount of effort, but I think it was the first time where the game really went from, by working on the demo, where it went from, we think this will be good, to, wow, that actually worked. That worked really well. And the two things I remember most of it, so Mark and I had been practicing it for about a month. We'd get together, and for 2 hours each day, we'd run through this 40-minute thing, our handoffs, figuring out how we were going to do it. So it was incredibly rehearsed. So we were pretty ready, and yet as we're playing through, stuff's still coming in, new stuff's getting checked in. And I remember the team bursting into applause the first time we actually saw TACCAM work. Everybody just went, yes, and I remember it specifically because the TACCAM had kind of worked, but at the moment the ground rings went in, it was just there it is, and then I think it crashed shortly thereafter, so we had to fix that. But at the very least, it was there, and there was that moment of exultation where you're like, wow, that's the real thing. And the other biggie was, of course, knowing this demo inside out, and we get to the stage, and someone in the panel before us has gone and pulled a cable. And so we have this panicked moment, right, where Blair, who's running the demo, and Patrick, who's our IT guy, they both swarm on stage, right, and they're both
and there's 20 Teamster guys standing around going, I don't do wires.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not the wire guy. He's on break, and we can't get him off. And so I'm in the back, and they're putting a thing up, and it's supposed to be a PowerPoint, and it's actually the game, and I can tell. And I say to this guy, I'm like, no, you got the wrong thing up, and he just goes, click. And I've never quite wanted to murder someone until that moment. And meanwhile, you have all the other guys just frantically trying to make the game go. And we find, so Mark and I have to ad-lib for 10 minutes, right? And thank God we practiced for 2 months, because we were like, yeah, well, we can slide back into this literally at a moment's notice. So as soon as it runs, we'll be fine. But yeah, so we got a huge crowd, big ovation and stuff, and we were super proud of it. And I remember one of the combat designers came out of the crowd and just like flung himself into a hug backstage. We did it! And it's like, yeah, for the whole team, that was kind of the moment I think where it became the game. That was a huge moment for me.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. There were a couple other times for me where finally, like the idea that you had finally turned into a thing. And anybody here tried to ever paint a picture? And you start off and you got that blank canvas and you're like, this is gonna be the best painting ever. And you do a gesture on there and you're like, I'm the king of drawing. And then for the next 10 hours, it's just a big muddy smear of despair. And you're convinced that that you need to throw away any pretension of being an artist and go work at Burger King or something. But the two things that were huge challenges that the opening sequence from putting the disc in and then the 3D scene comes up, you press the button, it explodes, then the character creator comes up and you can go and do all that crazy stuff and then it seamlessly turns around and turns into a scene. That was incredibly hard. We had programmers and we had to figure out how to put the data and where to put it on the disc so that it would load on. And I mean, there must have been 10 programmers and 10 artists and the music and the cinematic and everything. So when that finally worked, I literally jumped out of my chair and punched my screen. I was so happy. And the second time was we did the storyboard for the moment where, no spoilers, but something really sad happens and then they sing a song to make you feel less sad. And I was like, this could really turn out super hokey and bad, but we're gonna try anyways. And when that actually, all the pieces finally came together, the song and the cutscene and the figuring out all the technical challenges, I got a little bit welled up. Yeah, and I'm not sure if I'm not going to say it was a good scene because that'd be praising Laidlaw. But we accomplished a really hard thing, and I felt pretty happy then too. That was memorable.
Well, mine's a bit smaller scale. I was working on a scene where you dance with somebody. And quite often when we're working on these kinds of scenes, we'll have one or two pieces that comes in late. In this case, I didn't get the music until way late in the project. So we'd spent months building this incredibly intricate scene, and then waited and hoped that we got it right, because if the music came in and it was not right, we would have to tear the entire thing down and start it again. So the first day we got the music, I sat down again with Mike Kent, and we sat down in his office and played a video, and we played the music over it, and it worked, and we just went, oh, thank God. So, yeah.
Yeah, mine's a little smaller scale, but it gave me an impression of what we had done. And this was probably about 10 months before ship. We do focus testing in Vancouver and our Burnaby studio. They've got testing labs and a good group of people that they pull upon to come in and do games. But they mostly do sports games. So you do NHL, you do FIFA and whatnot. And I was talking with the guy who was running the testing labs, and we were doing the Hinterlands, which may or may not have a bit of content in it. So instead of having one like a full 6 or 7 hour session, we did it double that over 2 days, and there's two parts to this. One of which was what the guy who ran the testing labs was saying is that when almost any other game that we'd have is you'd run a 6 hour session at about hour 4, you'd start losing people and the room would be empty by hour 5 because people would get an impression of the game and fill out their surveys and whatnot. We at the end of day 2 for the doing the Hinterlands, we literally had to shut off people's machines. They would not leave the room. And then we were going through the footage because we're recording all this. And part of going to the Hinterlands is we wanted to make sure that there was context to it, so we actually had you start in Skyhold and then transition to the Hinterlands. Well, no, in this case it was Skyhold. Yeah, yeah. But we looked at the footage, and one woman for the first day and a half actually never left Skyhold. She just completely went through every single codex entry, and we can see that she was she spent enough time on each individual screen that she was reading every single codex entry, every conversation. She just went to town on Skyhold, and I realized at that point, okay, we're going to do this.
And I think my favorite part out of that was that for the next, say, 2 to 3 months, we'd get feedback on exploration. Like, well, there's some concerns about engagement with the blah, blah, blah. And Aidan would go, I'd just like to remind everyone, we had to kick people out of the room. So we're starting okay. Yes, we should improve stuff, but let's not knee jerk, okay? It was a good reminder, right? Like when people are enjoying something, there is a danger of overcorrecting. So
I think mine is actually happening right now because it takes a long time to go from a series of words to some lines of words to a whole bunch of words and a gigantic tool set. There are somewhere around, both VO and non-VO, somewhere around 1 million words in Dragon Age Inquisition. There are a lot of them. And I've read a lot of them. And I love editing banter is, I think, my favorite thing that starts coming in after a lot of the main game is done. And then the demos when you finally see Iron Bull talking about throwing Sarah over the line and she tells him that he's crazy and it's like, yes, that was great, they're awesome. And they've been characters to us for a really long time, and coming and talking to you guys and hearing you telling the stories that I'm really familiar with, but through your eyes and through your game, makes it real for all of us together, and that's my favorite thing.
And you touched on characters there, which is a really important part of all of our games. And maybe you can tell us more about how you bring those characters to life.
So we have a couple of steps we go through when we're starting to build out our core cast, which is that we always want characters that are involved in the events of the story, that would have an opinion, and that would naturally have an opinion, and that don't all share the same opinion. We want some natural antagonism between the cast. Places where they can have friction, places where they can find agreement, places where you as the player can agree or disagree with them, or find them agreeable or disagreeable. All those things to us are quite important. The old saw is that if you make a character that nobody really cares about, then you've failed. If you make a character lots of people love and lots of people hate, then you've succeeded. Because the character at the very least was divisive and intriguing, and thus therefore actually had character, as opposed to just, yeah, I agree with you, man. Okay, well, then you're in the party. I like his attitude, and you don't want a bunch of yes men, right? Especially when you're dealing with apocalyptic world stakes, or whether Colin should be playing chess, right? You want people to disagree about the things that are going to come up in the course of the game. So we tend to build them in that, and where possible, we tend to look at our previous games and go, okay, what perspectives have we not explored? And I talked about this a bit yesterday, in that Dragon Age is a game about perspective, in that no one really knows what's going on in the history. It's all written in first person. People have written accounts of things. They may be distorted. They may be completely falsified. They may be history being changed by the victors. And so if we've done Noble Dalish, maybe misguided Noble Dalish, but attempting to help. Good job, Meryl. And if we've done you as Dalish, and we've done City Elf, and we've done Elf from Tevinter and Fenris, right? It's like, okay, so what Spectrum Elf have we not done? You can end up with Sarah, who's like anti-elf in a way, right? And for some people that's utterly repugnant. Right, that's self-hate. That's a bunch of stuff, and yet for Sarah, it's just how she is. Right, that's her character, and so the writers tend to look at the perspectives we haven't explored, characters that naturally clash and agree, so that you end up with some alliances and that kind of stuff, and then we have a broad spectrum of characters for your party. And then from there, we kind of start to spec them out. We always make sure we involve the art group in character development. This is something that goes way back to even Jade Empire, where some of the concepts were brainstormed with the concept group and so on. And then Matt's team kind of starts to build out the visuals for them.
Yeah, my thought is the two most important things for the character for me is choosing the right voice, which isn't my department, but I always really enjoy doing that. And building a face that people will like. And so we actually draw lots of different faces, and we do a full turnaround of the face to make sure that it gets built correctly. And then as far as the rest of the appearance, the outfit goes, and we have tried to establish the aesthetics of whatever world faction, whether it's Tevinter, and then from that we'll say take the character Dorian, he's got a cool voice, we like his face, we know what his role is, and then we try to make him look like Tevinter but also be kind of a unique individual within that. And in some cases, we do definitely try to design the costumes around cosplayers. I don't know if you guys noticed those people outside do a really nice job. And in Sarah's case, we actually redesigned her haircut because somebody, I can't remember the name of the lady who was doing
It
this.
was Chloe on Heroes of Cosplay.
Right. And she wanted to do her hair a certain way, so we actually drew up a bunch of different hairstyles, and she picked one. So there you go.
Yeah, and you guys really concerned about, like, let's make sure there's pouches, let's make sure there's...
Got to be somewhere to put your cell phone.
Yeah.
You got to actually be able to put it on without carpet tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in theory, people who are going adventuring into some sort of weird Tevinter dungeon probably need food. Or matches, or
an invisible sack to hold 99
99 breastplates.
suits,
Yeah, exactly.
99
yeah.
breastplates and 14 different long swords.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like to assume
there
there's
is a joke item. Did anybody find the armor of the vanity armor? The corpse wearing the gold bikini?
of impractical agility or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Plus 99 charisma, minus 100 defense.
And if I can add a little bit more onto that, so as this process gets going, not that there's much I can do that's better than a gold chainmail bikini, but and, the writers are looking at like Cassandra, characters that have had an arc that we want to continue to explore, and who are the new people, and then we get to the day where we have the romance discussion. And the romance meetings are great. They are just as weird as you would think a meeting about trying to figure out who's going to do the what with who, and there are charts and there are inappropriate remarks, and we literally,
reference. Lots of reference, lots
of eyebrows. But so by the time we got through with that on Inquisition. Melanie Fleming, one of our fabulous people who works with she interfaces with the localization teams where our games get translated into 8-ish languages. And so to help them figure out how to translate things, she did a chart that we now lovingly refer to as the Who's Doing Who chart. And it had, because it's important when you're trying to translate, and it can be different genders and it's this amazing Technicolor chart with women and men and both, and rainbows and colors, and it's great. So
I feel like we could have called it the pivot table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's full of data.
Yeah. I suppose that's true.
I always enjoyed the various translations of innuendo into non-English languages.
Sarah almost killed every language other than English. Part of my job is also to help answer questions that the translators have, which with Sarah was, what is she talking about here? For like 99% of them, and most of them we replied, we don't know either. So just make her sound good. Good luck with that.
And Luke would write extensive notes. Well, you see, what's happening here is a reference to a 1492 event that occurred in southern London, which caused the vernacular to grow in the following way, which in turn was used as a pun to represent bread. And, there's some poor guy who speaks 7 languages going, I just, okay, we're going to go with bread.
One character development thing I was keenly observant on, and I didn't have any work on it, but for the exploration wilderness areas, I needed to have somebody to essentially exposit the beginning, give the player a bit of a kick. So we needed to have a character written for that, and it started out with just a generic character model and a pop-up text. You're in Crestwood. There's some undead. There's a Fade Rift. Figure it out. And then the next stage was the character got written. It's the first time I've heard the name of Scout Harding, because we just referred to her as lead scout for a while. And so again, it was just a generic character model. I think it wasn't a dwarf. She wasn't a dwarf at that time. Yeah, at first. And I think that was Cheryl Chi who decided no.
It was literally just a dude. He was the most generic dude in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that it evolved into a female character, a dwarf character, and then the first version didn't have any of the romance options, or at least rather not romance, but the flirting options. I really hope I'm not spoiling anything here. And then the first version of her physical character was extremely buggy for a very long time, so she had this horrible clown makeup that, and again, eventually got into the character. And we had her text-to-speech voice, so again, the robot voice. So it was just very interesting to see her go from from a concept to I need information out here. I've now got a bit of a personality. I've got a look. That look's been refined. The voice has been refined. And then my favorite part was because she ended up very, I don't know, this is my opinion, she's very, very sweet and very, very friendly. But then Frank and his team did an initial cinematic scene where she essentially murders a bunch of people. And so at the end, my headcanon for Scout Harding is she's a little bit sociopathic.
Before I kind of opening up to questions to the crowd, I got one last for you. Obviously, on any project like this, and especially with game design, you have to kill some of your favorite ideas just for any number of many reasons. But is there something that's in there that you worked on that you're really happy that you got to have a part of putting in there?
Well, I got one. Frank's got one too. Yours is probably better than mine since you do real work as opposed to imagineering.
What?
I do try to do real work. So two things I was proud of, and this is it's a danger. Matt and I both kind of struggle with this. Is that we both come from developer backgrounds. I was a writer. Matt, you did modeling, I think, and level art. Yeah, and so we both try to keep our oar in a little bit. And so there was a point where the writing team was million words, pretty swamped. And I was like, man, this is an opportunity, and I don't know that I have time. I ended up not having time, but I was able to write some of the Haven characters and just actually, get to use the tool set and dig in. And I think probably the thing that I took the most joy in was writing Harriet, who's the smith you meet in Haven. And that one little bit of backstory where he outlines how he was at Lothering, and then he was at Redcliffe, and then he showed up at Haven just before shit exploded. And, but probably things are going to be okay for Haven, right? And you're like, yeah, sure, I mean, you had a bunch of options, but I just like the idea of this guy who's like, I don't know if I'm cursed or lucky. And, that to me was one of my favorite moments to throw to the player. Like, I don't know, you decide, because seriously, this guy's got some bad juju.
Well, we got a few. Right towards the end there, we did a pass, and it wasn't just me, it was a lot of the cinematic designers, through a few of the key moments in the game, and we wanted to see more dragons. So we played through the set. I don't know how much I can talk about without spoiling it, but we played through the setback, and there was this moment when you go back into town, and you see a dragon fly over you, and we went, this is unacceptable! So I went and talked to a bunch of animators and convinced them to stay late one night and give me this dragon landing on top of the church and blowing a whole bunch of stuff up. And that was probably my favorite thing to work on, other than Sarah. So, yeah.
I mentioned this one yesterday, and again, like Mike, I'm not necessarily a lot of hands-on, but and this isn't me keeping it. This was me trying to cut it. Originally, looking at scope and the amount of time we had and the amount of people we had, there was no way we could do all of the levels. And the Storm Coast, which became essentially on the chopping block, and I had essentially cut it out of the game. And as soon as the level designer and the environment artist heard about this, they railed and rallied and decided to come in late and on weekends, and they uncut it on me. So,
I also really liked the day Aidan worked on the Fade Rift encounters and stuff a lot, and we went through like 12, 14 prototypes. And I remember the day you looked at me and went, well, I'm prepared to declare these fun riffs. And we were all punchy enough that was the height of humor. Oh, Aidan, you wit. I'm so sad. Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster at the end of a project. But yes, I declare these fun riffs. It was like a clown should come pouring out of them.
There's an image I can't shake now. I think there are two things actually that I enjoyed the most. The scene that Matthew was talking about with the singing. In my off hours in my other life, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I sing, and so I got to be part of helping make that scene come together. And David Gator wrote the words to the theme, and then Patrick, my husband, who's a writer there, helped him work on that, and I got to record the scratch track that the actors were listening to when they were singing it. And so I got to see that evolve from us sitting in this room arguing about the meter of this thing, that these words that Dave wanted to put on it, to this amazing scene that was really fun.
I remember when the voices came in for the different actors because they weren't singing together, like which obviously you find a natural harmony. So Mike Kent's our sound designer, and he goes to me, yeah, no, I got it working. Sounds really good. I had to auto-tune it, and my eyebrows just shot up. Like, wait, what? Like, is this going to sound like T-Pain? And he was like, no, just like super subtle. It's okay. Because we had a pitch at one point where someone was like, I have this idea, and they like wanted to somehow work like a pop star that was big into auto-tuning into Dragon Age, and it was one of those like highfalutin, no, we could get marketing money. I'm like, and wreck stuff. So the word auto-tune makes me just like tense up like a prey animal. It's like, no. So yeah, that was the best part. Oh, you just made them sound good. Oh, okay. So there you go. Auto-tuning isn't inherently evil.
Apparently. And then the other thing I'm proudest of, and it's more, I think, being proud of the group of people that are working on them, was the day that you could view some of the first scenes, and the day that I was playing through, and thing exploded. My Canary lady got up and looked around, and that first group of powerful people that you're looking at there's only one guy among them. And that's kind of cool. And it's not something that we set out to plan, but that it's part of the culture that we work in, that we are, trying to create diversity on purpose, and that we're trying to pay attention to that. And that it happens on purpose sometimes, and then just sort of organically other times. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Actually, we did a pass. It was Brienne, one of the writers, who I tasked with this fairly thankless task, which was we went through all the characters in the game, and our tool set by default, when you make a new character, it just makes them male, right? It just inherently they're male, and so they get assigned a default male appearance. And we had done some initial numbers. And because of that, mostly, because it's like you have a bunch of incidental characters, we were something like 80% men in the game. And I said, that I'm not sure that matches how humanity works. So we should fix that. And poor Brienne had to go through and just like literally just change a bunch of stuff, and their default models got overridden. We did it early enough that it didn't become onerous. Like we didn't have to then replace all the custom work we'd done and custom heads and stuff. Instead, we caught it early, went through and basically did a 50-50 pass, right? So the main cast were fine, right? We'd already been cognizant of that, but I just came to all these incidental merchants and just dude talking to dude, and that was the thing. It was always dude talking to dude. So we did a pass to fix that, and after we completed that, then we went through and did all of our custom heads and tweaked their hairstyles and that kind of stuff. It's funny how that it wasn't that hard. It wasn't particularly, tiring. It took a couple days, but the nice thing was that we just caught it early enough to go, yeah, cool, we can absolutely fix this. And while we're at it, let's blender up the skin tones, shall we? And that just, I think, helps makes the game feel like, because you went to a lot of fairly cosmopolitan places, and I think it's really cool when it's like, oh yeah, they're from all over, and good mix of gender and stuff. It just feels better and more welcoming.
All right, I'll open it up now from questions from the crowd. So if you have one, just pop your hand up.
When you were designing characters interacting with each other and stuff, in Dragon Age Origins and in 2, you had the plus and minus system with actual figures to the influence that the characters felt. What went into the decision to changing that to just greatly approves, greatly disapproves, and the only ability to be able to tell if a character liked you or not was how they interacted and what they said?
Well, a few things. That one got debated. Certainly among the team, I received feedback about that. So there's a few actual like hard reasons to it, and then there's kind of my philosophical. Philosophically, I felt that gaming up a system that was about whether people like you, like Aidan likes me +5, like that felt very unreal and super artificial. And it originally it just said approves and disapproves, and some people made a very cogent argument that kind of sucked because you couldn't tell if Dorian was super pissed or just like mildly miffed, and so on. So adding the greatly and slightly just at least gave you a sense of how much that changed. The second big reason we decided to nuke it is that in Origins, where you had like a bar that told you where the progress was, is that bar, like they are now warm, controlled essentially all of their interactions, right? Warm unlocked a new thing, so you could basically kind of play the game to try and get to warm, and then you would absolutely see a thing happen. Inquisition did not work like that, quite deliberately, because that made the characters feel isolated from the game world and isolated from the events happening. So instead, we built it so that a combination of likes you enough and you've completed certain story events, and sometimes certain branches of story events would cause dialogues to trigger, right? Bull has a dialogue that will not fire until you defeat a dragon, for instance. So that meant that the system was not the predictable, clean, isolated friendometer that worked in Origins, because you could hit a milestone and it would have literally no effect, right? Other than possibly changing their greetings. So the other thing is that the scale that we used by the time we were done did not quite, like, it didn't line up in a nice clean plus 100, negative 100. The numbers are a little bit wacky and they change in different ways. And the characters aren't necessarily consistent. So take it all, and basically what that says is that any measure is going to be largely inaccurate and certainly kind of distracting, because it doesn't necessarily mean that there's new content waiting. So we pulled that out because I personally dislike it, because I think it kind of makes it feel like a game mechanic and not a friendship kind of system. But I also, because even if we had put it in there, it wouldn't necessarily be a useful or cogent piece of data. So across all those reasons, we basically said, no, this has got to go. And I went, yay, but I'll put the greatly approves and greatly disapproves. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. Again, it's one of those things where we'll look at feedback, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
All right, and we're actually, because this room's super packed to get around in, after this next question, we'll just, if you line up with our enforcers right in the middle there, she will take questions, so you can just line up with her.
You guys were talking earlier about the signs of a successful character being players feel really passionate and really like them, or they really dislike them. You know, they're not neutral on them. Sarah was one of those really disliked characters for me, and I asked her to leave my party. When did you come to the decision that you would allow players to ask characters to leave their party after they've already let them join?
It was kind of always in the DNA. I mean, it goes all the way back to Origins. There's opportunities to tell people to just go away and stuff. Yeah, in fact, that goes back to BG2. Yeah, you're right. You know, sometimes they leave on their own. Sometimes you can just be like, look, I dislike you. Get out. And so, yeah, that was it. And the thing is that... So you invite a character into your party and go, wow, I dislike you. And then they linger forever. Felt kind of awkward. There are a few characters that are kind of story necessary, like Cassandra. She's got way too much in the game. She's not leaving no matter what you do, even if she hates you. She gets super drunk if she hates you, which is awesome. It's like, so we're coping, are we? But with Sarah, it was just like we knew that there would be people who dislike Sarah. There would be some people that absolutely adore her because she's a big dumb dork. And so it just absolutely made sense. It's like, well, let's let the player have enough agency to go, no, you're out. Because if one of the big fantasies we're trying to deliver is command, I think commanders get to remove soldiers they don't like. So.
Not to ask such an ironic question, but was there a reason that you went with like the default gray outfit, especially in Skyhold, for like the romance and the judgment scenes? They seem like they're very important scenes, and it kind of feels like the Inquisitor is in their underwear.
There's technical reasons that I will speak to.
I don't think there's any technical reasons.
Okay.
No, now you mention it, I'm not actually sure why we did that. Well, part of it was because if you were wearing, giant spiky dragon mail and you're trying to smooch somebody that doesn't have anything on, it would look a little awkward. It looks pretty bad. Yeah.
Like some of the robes don't have cloth stem, and some of the older platforms don't have cloth stem. So you end up in a place where you're on the throne and you go to cross your legs and this big tube of robe lifts up, and you're like,
yeah.
well, that's.
Well, we chose that
subpar.
one because it did fit everybody. It didn't go through your face, and it wasn't supposed to just be gray. And that, apart from sweet Canary headbutts, that is one thing that we didn't quite get in, which we were supposed to be able to do, which was to be able to tint your clothes and dye them whatever color you want. So I just didn't quite get in there. That's not a very good answer, but that's the answer.
Times is hard. Yeah.
What was the reasoning behind not supporting modding of the game at all?
Well, that
Technical.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
technical
That's a
actually.
one-word
That is
answer.
extremely complicated. We have a team of engineers, vast team of engineers, and keeping Frostbite running is difficult. So I liken it to if anybody watches Top Fuel racing, there's like 10 guys scurrying around, tensioning the blower belt and making sure everything's plugged on, and you're like, yeah, let's do it. And you step on the gas and it explodes in your face. So there's that, and also because it is quite advanced technology, they just don't want to release it to the public at the moment. But as Mike was, well, why don't you just give your answer from yesterday?
Yeah, so it's something we have looked at. Like, we've evaluated, is it possible? The answer is barely if the stars align. You know what I mean? Like, it's exceedingly difficult because there's a lot of dependencies across, like, server architecture, third-party software, and as I was saying yesterday, after a while it turns into that Guardians of the Galaxy scene where the programmers are just going boodle, 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 and you're like, okay, sure, and you just back away. But the other challenge is that even if we overcame technical, we'd have to make sure it was okay with DICE and blah 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 to release it. That said, it's something that I know Mark would love to see. Our executive producer. I think I personally love mods. I think they're awesome. I'm delighted to see some people have actually got some texture mods out there already. That's kind of cool. I was on Dragon Age Nexus. I'm probably not supposed to look there, but whatever. So that's really neat. But so there's a big giant hill to climb before that can happen, but it's not something we're philosophically opposed to. It's just the technical is like daunting. So there you go.
Well, it's also
enough, thanks.
licensing as well. Like for DAO,
yeah.
we had to write a light exporter and all this other kind of stuff. And for Frostbite, I can't even count the number of third-party plugins there are. Yeah, it would be massive.
While I was playing Dragon Age, I noticed that a lot of the metals and other materials are really shiny. I was wondering if this was a stylistic choice or if it was done from the change to Frostbite, which affected your shader system that you were used to.
Well, sort of half and half. Did want to have very specular, attractive metals. Again, this is not a good answer, but this is the answer. Just to be honest with you all, is the shader system is kind of partly physically based and partly is an older math model. So in order for you to be able to see the armor in a really dark space, we had to crank up the specularity quite high. So that means that in a bright space, kind of looks like you're wearing like anti-laser chrome armor, which would be handy when we do our Mass Effect crossover and there's blasters and stuff.
For legal reasons, I am required to say that we are not currently planning that, nor have we in any way announced such a crossover.
I'm totally planning that.
For legal reasons, I'm a professional wet blanket.
Hi guys, so when I was playing the game, there was actually a certain character that you meet early on that I just hated, like absolutely hated. And then very, very late in the game, I learned something about this character and it 100% changed my mind. And I took this character with me, permanent party member from then on. So when you're writing and creating these characters, is that like something that you're consciously aware of or thinking about, that like, we want the players to think about characters, like change their opinion, or is that just something that happened like character specific?
Characters tend to be at their best when they do grow or when they have hidden depths, right? Like when there's something that engaging with them changes your view of them or your view of how they view things. So it's not like we necessarily sit down and go, no, let's make this one the jerk until. It's more that when the writers are kind of planning out their arcs, they tend to kind of build in information where it's like, okay, cool, we should have some revelations, we should have some information, we should have them grow and change, right? Liliana can go through a pretty drastic shift in her personality depending on how you play. Other characters' relevation can make you stand up, and I mean, for me, it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart because if nothing else, it can be very powerful when it happens to you too, right? So the revelation in Knights of the Old Republic, for instance, caused me to play my character a different way, right? You know, it's like, well, to hell with it. I'm going dark side then, right? So, you know, fall of the Paladin, and it's just like, yeah, no more Jedi. Bastila, let's do this thing. And so that was really, really powerful and cool. So I think whenever you get a character with that kind of revelation, and I know, Karin, you guys actually track like where kind of big beats and changes are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because part of it is you're always trying to keep the balance between it's a story and interesting characters, and there's also stuff they need to tell you where to go and who to kill, and so you're trying to balance those two things. And so, but yeah, the big changes, or you know, we'll start the story knowing this character has this other backstory and figuring out where is it appropriate to start teasing that, if you will, and then when to actually find out. So.
This is probably going to get a short answer, but for those of us who made a certain choice in Awakening, will we possibly see the Architect again?
No promises, but I didn't say no.
Yes, you did.
Wait, no, did I? Oh,
And
busted.
no, yeah.
I promise not. You said it twice.
I know
I'm
that
gonna
there's a
carry
lot
that to
of
me.
romance options already, sorry. But I was just wondering why Liliana wasn't a romance option in this game.
That would be me putting down a rule, which was essentially that thou shalt not cheat upon thyself. That would be in a nutshell. I just don't want to deal with that because that's going to make someone so angry. Even though they're doing it, it's going to be our fault somehow, and I just don't want to deal with that. But also just essentially the way I looked at it is that like Liliana and Morrigan and other returning characters that were romances, I felt that they either, you know, maybe they were in love with the Warden, maybe they weren't, but it felt like their romances lived and belonged in Origins as kind of a complete element, and that was stronger. Returning characters like Colin, however, well, yeah, that was all good. I figured, yeah, let's just do that one. And then the writers did it anyway, and I probably couldn't have stopped them because they're crazy.
Colin is the Colin feels are an entity unto themselves. They drove all the Colin stuff.
Yeah,
That and
that's
his
basically
hair.
why. No cheating on yourself.
Yay!
So why is the Mabari not an available companion or just a summon?
Because we're mean. So, you know, oldest saw in the world, but game development is about making choices and choosing what content will and will not go in. And Inquisition is a pretty monumental task to retool it all. And the Mabari, done well, has his own talent tree, has his own animations, has his own set of abilities, has his own character arc. So he requires to do him well requires an investment. Doesn't mean there won't be a Mabari in the future. Doesn't mean that we couldn't do something cool like an Orlesian Courser or something. But with Inquisition, we were biting off a very large sandwich, and to chew it all without choking to death was going to be a challenge. So we didn't want to add dog to the sandwich because who eats dog? That's just terrible.
Well, Dog is also not very interesting from a character development perspective. They don't wear a lot of different outfits. Shouldn't romance them probably. So compared to the other ones, kind of lame.
I would like to make a vote for being able to ride one sometime, though.
Saddle it up only if you're a female dwarf. She's probably the only one light enough. Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
I would do that.
Think of the mayhem.
Mayhem.
Hi, I was just wondering what happened to Colin's helmet.
To which, sorry?
Colin's helmet.
Oh, the lion one?
Yeah.
Oh, did anything happen to it?
Perhaps you turned the button to turn all helmets off?
No, he's not in the party. Wouldn't affect
Oh.
him. Oh, wait. Okay, I know. There were scenes in a trailer where he had the big helmet on, right? And he doesn't have that helmet on because he's calling for the defense of Haven, right?
He doesn't want to wreck his hair.
Yeah. A, he didn't want to wreck his hair. B, do you want to know the dark secret of that trailer? We totally couldn't get his lip sync working. So he just kind of went, and as much as he looked like he was calling for an impassioned kind of defense, it was just, and sometimes game developers have to cheat. And it's like, we do have this awesome helmet. clang, and so under that helmet he's going ah, and I assume he sounds like Bane in the unedited version, right? You think Lyrium is your ally.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's I remember. that was a Cameron Lee joint, and he was like, "Well, I don't know how we're gonna fix this," and I think it was you, Matt, who just went, "Well,
Yes.
the nuclear
Thanks for giving
solution."
away all of my card tricks.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Hey, so one of the characters I thought that was really interesting in the game, and one of the more likable ones, was Dorian. His personal backstory with his sexuality and other things that you get to discover in the game, and the way it ties into the Tevinter culture and was really interesting and seemed really just almost perfect. You know, what was that writing? How was it like writing that into the storyline and everything?
Actually, that was all David Gator who did that, and I wish he were here so he could tell you. You know, getting to watch it and talk with him as he was writing it the first time I read it. I kind of didn't want to change a word. It just he nailed it in one. You know, and yeah, I don't feel like I can actually answer that because he's the one that put all the work into it, but I can agree with you and say I think he's a really amazing character, and he came out very well.
I know David considers that the fulfillment of a personal quest.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool character. So
Yeah.
And Dave had a couple moments over the course of this game. Both Cassandra and Dorian were kind of his, and he in both of them he kind of like got this excited jitter about him that Dave sometimes gets, and just kind of was like, everyone leave me the hell alone, and like went away for a weekend and came back on Tuesday and was like, they're done. And
Cassandra was like that. I was like, you can't be done. That was like 3 hours.
Yeah, like he just cranked through her. And I remember Karin like, oh, you need to read this one scene. And of course it's the book for those of you who've seen it. And it's just Karin's like, it's so good. It makes everything about her better. And I'm just like, yeah, I read it and I was like, wow, this is kind of ingenious. And everybody's going to just giggle. Yeah.
I'm sitting there in my office all by myself reading it, and I can't tell anybody about it. And it's like, oh my God, just hold on 2 years, you guys. It'll be great.
All right, so I'm actually going to bring up something that we haven't talked about at all. The multiplayer ended up being basically completely separate from the story. And I know you guys love your story. So was that a difficult decision, or was that just a no-brainer?
Kind of a no-brainer. We recognize that the Dragon Age story is a good single-player experience, and we got a fair amount of feedback from Mass that people felt like they'd been forced into multiplayer, and they kind of had this. Often it was like, I was forced to play it, but it was really fun. But the story always started with, I felt forced, I felt coerced, and that wasn't really something we wanted to do. Like being able to play the game the way you want to play it was a big part of our goals. Hence pause and play and TechCam and making sure that all those things still worked. So with multiplayer, we basically decided, okay, thematically it has to tie in, right? You should be agents of the Inquisition. It was quite cool when we got the kind of the various figureheads giving you your briefings. So you've heard Liliana, Colin, and Josephine. Something not everyone may know is that the other three voices when you play multiplayer who are giving you their briefings are actually the keep commanders, the one you can talk to like after you capture the different keeps. So Colin's kind of second in command is that guy, the kind of older sounding guy giving you the information. So you actually end up with this kind of, oh cool, wow, those are characters from single player. But we didn't want that forced crossover. We want people to be able to discover it, dive into it, give it a whirl, and play accordingly.
A whole lot of people put a whole lot of work into the war table, and so it was really cool to see that kind of have that feedback and loop the two things together.
I just had a quick question. That picture always bothered me, why he had his right hand instead of his left hand doing it. I was kind of wondering if that was just aesthetic.
That's just to keep you from noticing that Cole has no legs.
Matt, you've let them know all your secrets.
Okay, so in a lot of y'all's games, y'all really set a precedent in the industry as far as inclusion, diversity, and touching on topics a lot of even mainstream media are afraid to talk about: film, books, whatever. So sexuality, gender, lots of trans characters. I mean, is that something where y'all sat there and said, like, these people need to be represented in this medium? I mean, what prompted to really challenge the industry the way that y'all have? Because other people are still not doing what y'all are doing.
Well, Krem, I can speak to because 3 PAXs ago, I think, we did an LGBTQ panel like this, and it was more of a Q&A because we wanted to not be sitting here talking to people. We wanted to find out what's working, what's not working, what do you see, what do you want to see more of? And it was a really great discussion, and this trans gentleman came up and just very quietly and simply said, I want to see someone like me in a game who's not a monster. And we were like, okay, and we went away from that and went directly to the bar and started having drinks and figuring out how we could do that. And so we did that because we were asked to.
Yeah, and I mean, philosophically, being inclusive has always been very important to us. And as a studio, I think we've been growing in that direction. At the same time, you know, part of the thing for me is that it should not become like the mandate. It should not become something that we force into the game, because doing so either makes it feel very artificial and tacked on, or makes it feel like it's serving something other than the storytelling. But that said, when it's something that the writing team has internalized and that they're happy and excited to work on, they're willing to push themselves as creators. They're willing to tackle tough subjects in a way that we try to do with some grace, and that we work together as a team. We read through it, we review it, we get people that may have stakes in that game to make sure it isn't going to offend them. I know Krem was actually reviewed by people that could say no, don't write that. That would be terribly offensive. And it's like, great, thank you. That's exactly the feedback we need. But part of the joy for me is that having writers and having content creators like Frank who are perfectly fine, comfortable working in these different subjects, is that their passion and their desire to tell those stories are what drive it, not like me mandating it from on high or a corporate, we must do the fall. It's more like, no, I have a story and I really want to tell it. And of course, then we go, well, that sounds great. That sounds fantastic. And it results in an inclusivity that I hope is natural, and at the same time is also part of often optional content, so not everybody needs to see it, and some people do get very uncomfortable, back out of the romance or what have you, right? And I think that's great, because you want all players to kind of enjoy it and know it's there.
Yeah, and just again, from a philosophical point of view, when we are doing world creation and creating the universes that you play in, is we want to make it, and I hate to say this, realistic as possible. So realistic, but with dragons, and people of different sexualities, people of different. People of different sexualities, people with different races, creeds, languages, whatnot, are part of the world, and so they need to be reflected in these fantasy worlds in order to make them feel like real places.
Well, that was actually a lot of my question, but I also want to know, why doesn't Cole have legs? I had another question. I had an actual question. That was a joke.
I think I forgot to click a layer. Because Connell's lazy.
But my actual question was, in Origins, you had characters that were, you could only romance as female, you could only romance as male. In Dragon Age 2, all of the romance options, as far as I know, were either one. And in Dragon Age Inquisition, you had ones who were definedly bi, definedly straight, definedly gay. I want to know what went into the decision changing it from each game to the next.
We thought the last version was better, basically. Like, that just, again, going back to they start as characters, so make them characters, right? Give them preferences, give them, not preferences, sorry, give them orientations, or I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong word. I do apologize. I'm not totally up on my parlance. Anyway, make them people first, then make them part of the game. Romance comes actually after that, right? And that, Cassandra obviously had been established. She and Galleon had a lot of sexual tension that was in there. Cassandra, and we were like, yeah, Cassandra will be straight. She'll be a female straight character, and that'll be that. for DA2, I think that was more of a fumble towards inclusivity. And sort of a like, well, this could be the best of both worlds. But we got, I think, very rightly the feedback that just feels like it's pandering to me, right, as the player. And sometimes that's cool, right? I mean, we do put stuff in our fantastical video game that you purchase kind of for you to make you feel like a badass. Romance did not seem like the right place to do that, right? It felt better if we just said, no, let's character first, and we go from there. So again, we basically just thought it was a better approach.
You talked about game development being a lot about choices, and I wonder kind of why multiplayer is even in the game.
Okay, a few answers. Number one, multiplayer proved to be a positively received, profitable, fair chunk of gameplay in Mass Effect 3, which gave us an understanding that without like nickel and diming pay to wins and paywalls and all that kind of stuff, that we could build a system very similar that allowed us to let people that wanted to play through a dungeon experience with their friends using the Dragon Age system, which was already built for 4 characters working together very cleanly, right? We had technical reasons, which is that we had an engine that supported multiplayer basically right out of the box, which significantly reduced the development cost of making it. If we'd had to put it into Eclipse, my understanding is that we would have had to mine the earth and sell all of its minerals to aliens, who would then bend time and space to give us the development time we needed and sell us a code that would unlock the universe, right? I don't know. It was apparently very hard. So we had this engine that did it. And then the final reason, and this is the one that it's funny because it's never really exposed to you guys until someone comes up here and says it, is when you have something like multiplayer, which is a mode in which 2 minutes into starting it up, you are able to engage with combat. And real combats, like encounters that follow similar rules and level design processes that we use across the main game, it means you are able to almost instantly evaluate combat changes. And we went through many months of periods where the combat team would come in, play a game at night, write down a list of changes and tweaks and balance changes they wanted to make, go work on those for that next morning, check it in so that the next night it would be ready to play and evaluate. And we went through a period where we were kind of adjusting the way combat felt and having a tool that allowed us to have everybody play, not just watch, play, and be involved and discuss amongst themselves, wait, no, this isn't right. These creatures aren't behaving right. This isn't happening right. Let us see this massive iteration and development. And we'd also seen that in Mass Effect 3. Because again, you have people that are really invested in this gun working right and this happening, complaining to the combat team, and the combat team going, awesome, there is no other way to get this feedback. So all of those things together, ease of development, proven business model, but also gameplay model that was not particularly aggressive or hostile, and rapid iteration that it allowed for our team. So there you go. That's why it's in the game.
All right, well, that's us for time, so I'd like to thank our panelists for coming out today.